very pleased to be with Xavier Chevrin. Okay, and we are actually sitting in the Citroën Berlingo, which drove from Shanghai, China, to Paris, France, the summer of 2010. We're, of course, now in January at the Detroit Auto Show, and Xavier is agreed to sit in the vehicle. He spent many hours.
Yes, I did. Many days.
Many days driving.
Many weeks and months.
Many weeks and months. So let's go back to sort of the start here. How did this idea come about that you thought you could actually drive an electric car from Shanghai across the wastes of China, the Gobi Desert, and across the steppes of Kazakhstan and Russia, and finally to Paris? Why did you think you could do that?
Well, I didn't know I could do it. Actually, that was the part of the challenge. With Gildo from VENTURI, we thought it would be a good idea to prove that with an electrical car, now we can go almost anywhere in the world, as long as we have an electrical potential that we can find every now and then, every day. And so I studied the maps, and I thought that Shanghai to Paris was quite an interesting journey to be done. Plus, there is an historical wink towards the Yellow Cruise by Citroën, who back in 1931, with the first cars, drove from Paris to Shanghai, or a bit further north from Shanghai, and they were supposed to go back from Shanghai to Paris, which they never did. So,
well, do we know what happened? They were just worn out, and the vehicles were worn out?
Well, the manager died actually in back in China, and another guy fell sick. All the team actually went away.
Everybody decided to go back home. So, whatever happened to the vehicles? Did they stay in China, or did they eventually get shipped back?
They were shipped back. There is one of the vehicles in Monte Carlo as well.
Okay. Wow. So you looked at the maps. Did you just assume that there was available electric power in all these sort of villages along the way, or?
The main thing was to check if there were villages on the way every, let's say, 180 miles, let's say, roughly.
Right.
And I knew that if there was a village, we were bound to find an electrical potential, enough electricity to plug the car.
Right.
Now the big challenge was to, once we arrived in a hamlet or in a village, where to find this plug, where to plug the car. That was a big challenge.
Right.
And that was this adventure was at two levels. The technological level, of course, and the human factor was very important. I think it was a very interesting way to promote electrical cars throughout Asia and Europe.
Right. Now, you had actually had if you will, maybe a pre-trip, because you had, the year before or something, you had driven electric motor scooters from Paris to the Chinese border.
Correct. Yeah. In 2008.
2008.
Yeah. It was. Well, every now and then I like to set up adventures that don't use fossil energy. So I think I thought it would be a good idea to use an electrical vehicle. At that time, I wanted to do it with a car, but I was supposed to do it with Renault and Dassault System, and actually they turned the ideas down because it was not in their business plan at that time. And so I turned toward scooters, and so I started from Paris, went all the way to the Chinese border. There I had the problem because it was at the same time as the Olympic Games.
And there was a little bit of a political tiff going on over carrying the torch and things like that through France.
That's right. And but VENTURI, and especially the chairman Gildo, followed the trip, and he liked it, and he suggested when I came back to do the same kind of thing
Right.
with one of his cars.
Yeah, yeah.
It was,
Okay, so you've sat now in this car. Let's talk about. You started in what was around April, I think, of 2010.
Yes, the exact date is 3rd of May.
3rd of May.
3rd
Okay,
of May.
so 3rd of May, set off from Shanghai,
Yes.
and
World Expo.
headed west, I guess.
Yeah, headed west. Yeah. We were supposed to have a GPS, but it would cover only Europe. So just
okay.
from the beginning,
So
there was
you had
trouble
maps
already. Yeah.
right? So you had
Yeah.
maps then, I
Actually,
guess.
we
or-
didn't have. Yes, but the problem is that it was all written in Chinese.
Oh yes.
So fortunately, I spent 1 year in China back in 2003, so I knew a little bit of Chinese, but it was not that helpful. It's very hard to read Chinese.
Yes.
And by the time you understand what you have read,
You're already past
you're
the
wrong.
sign.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
So the way out from Shanghai was really, really hard. But then eventually, once you get out from the big cities, it's much easier because the network is less dense than in Europe. So
Right.
once you get the right track, you keep on going.
Yeah. Okay, so you had. Let's talk about your companion. You had Geraldine with you.
Correct.
How did you two meet, and why did she decide to participate in this then?
Well, we met 9 years ago, roughly.
Okay.
Yes. She's been my companion since then.
Okay.
And she's a bit like me. How would you say that? Every now and then I set up adventures, as I said,
Right.
and she was a bit sad to leave me, to let me go without her.
Right,
For
right.
my other expeditions.
Yeah.
So this time I said, okay, we're going to set a new expedition, and you will be there. So that's why we went together, and she was
Okay.
very happy about this experience.
Good. Now, did she share the driving with you, or did you pretty much do it all then yourself?
She preferred me to drive,
Right.
just in case something happened, and I
Something
would get
happened.
mad at her. And,
Right.
yeah, because I can be very mad sometimes. And I say, okay, you drive. I'm doing the co-pilot. She speaks Chinese much better than I do.
Oh, okay.
So it was easier. It was a very complementary team.
Okay, all
So
right.
it was much easier, and she would prepare the next step all the time. Every
Okay.
time, saying, okay, you should go this, there, and we had 2 pairs of eyes,
eyes.
which was much easier to avoid all the tricks of the road.
Okay, so you went through China. You got to the border of Kazakhstan. From there, then you ended up in Russia,
Correct.
and then in Eastern Europe, and then finally, of those sort of segments, China, Kazakhstan, Gobi Desert, Russian steppes, and so on, which of those was the most daunting for you? Which was the most difficult?
Western China was very, very hard to cross. From the Tian Shan mountain with the passes over 10,000 feet high, we got snow there, and we had asked not to have any heating system because
Yeah.
we thought at that time nothing could happen as far as regarding
Right,
climate.
it's summertime.
Yeah, summertime. And then we
Right.
got this snowstorm at 10,000 feet of altitude, and it was so freezing. 3 degrees Celsius inside the car.
Inside the car.
Yeah,
Oh my!
Yeah. And
Meanwhile, behind you, you have, I think, Zebra battery packs
correct.
that
Yeah.
are running about, what, 300 degrees C, something like
Yeah,
that.
it's
So-
237 if I remember well,
Yeah.
240. The thing is that they've got a very special cover so that the heat is not that you
Right. They
can't
have to
feel
keep
it.
the heat inside,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So I wish I wish we could have felt more heating, but
Yeah.
at that time, but bad luck. So this was one of the hardest bits with the Gobi Desert, which was beautiful and people were so nice, but on a technological point of view, we were very scared to have something happen right in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
Which didn't happen because, well, I have to admit that this car, I'm not very much into technological details as far as electrical engines are concerned. But I have
Right.
to admit that this car has been reliable from the outset till the end.
I think we were talking, and on the entire trip, you had one flat tire.
Yes,
And that was a
yeah.
slow leak.
Yeah. One flat tire from the Chinese border until the Russian border on the other side. So we crossed all Kazakhstan with one time, going down
slowly.
slowly.
So you didn't have a spare, or you couldn't find a place to repair it?
We had a spare, but it was so slow that we said it would be fine.
Right.
Then after the Russian frontier, the nail went off, and then we had to change it.
Yeah. So were there any kind of problems, first of all, with finding electricity? And you were dealing with 380 volts and 240 volts and things. So what kind of problems did that present to you?
Well, it was a big issue every day, actually. The problem was to find the electrical potential, especially 380 volts is less easy to find than 220, obviously. So we had to go where we could find some 380 volts, I used to say town halls sometimes, firms, plants.
Right.
Otherwise in garage. Sometimes they've got big machines.
Right.
And if there wasn't any 380 volts, which happened every now and then, of course, we could plug the car with 220 volts. The problem is that with 220 volts, we have to recharge the batteries one after the other. So it takes 3 times more time.
Oh, because you have 3 battery packs in the car.
Yeah.